So you are in Kyiv at the moment, is that correct?
It is absolutely correct, and I haven't left Kyiv on the day of invasion. I've been staying here all the time, and well, as a historian, I appreciate the moment which I and perhaps the whole world now recognizes as a turning point in the world's history. So I decided to have my own experience of this moment.
Sasha, could you tell us, how did you manage to survive and stay safe?
Well, Kyiv is a relatively safe place, especially the downtown where I'm living and where I'm sitting right now. This is my apartment. This is the very heart of the city. And unfortunately, the outskirts of the city suffered from shelling, but very few things landed in here. So we were more or less safe. But nevertheless, of course, we thought it would be reasonable to spend nights in the bomb shelters in the nearby house. So we spent over 30 nights. But last week, when our army pushed the enemy back, so we felt it possible not to go to the shelter, which is dusty, well, not a very pleasant place. I'm not going to say anything good about this place, but nevertheless, there was sort of social life in there. We were 8 people in a small room, and 3 dogs or 4 dogs and cat. And by the way, my dogs really loved to go down stairs to go down that shelter. But otherwise, we were spending days here, except for the time when sirens signaled about danger. So we, in the first couple of weeks, we were sitting in the bomb shelter, I would say many hours during the day as well. As far as other things like grocery, they, well, there were supplies in the.
Sorry to interrupt. Let me ask you a few short questions, because I know your time is late there, and I don't want to keep you too long. But let me ask you a few short questions here. When did you hear about what happened in Bucha, and what are your thoughts? What were your thoughts when you heard what happened?
Well, I learned about this immediately after the news were aired. I think 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, perhaps 3 days ago. Well, I'm a historian, and the ordinary nickname for Russians among Ukrainians is, by the way, Turkish word which means butcher. Whereas butcher is a respected trade in Turkey. Well, in Ukraine, this word we introduced 300 years ago, when Muscovites slaughtered Ukrainian cities as a punishment for the so-called treason of our hetman, Cossack hetman, who sided with the Swedish king who wanted to invade Russia, but on the way stopped in Ukraine. Well, it's a long story, but ever since we used to call Russians as butchers, so
Yes.
they just proved their sobriquet, this grim sobriquet. And as a historian, I know that this is, of course, a genocide. It's a right and a sufficient description of what happened, because people were slaughtered just for the reason of being Ukrainian.
Mhm.
But also, I know that it was a sign of exemplary punishment for runaway slaves, because Moscow is always treated, and they are keeping treating, they keep treating others as slaves.
Mhm.
Those who are not Russians are slaves, and therefore they. This is not exactly the genocide by intention. They simply want to restore slavery
Mhm.
in Ukraine, because they need 40
Yeah.
million of extra people. They have shortage of people, as you know, and these are, by the way, good military guys who performed quite well.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this question. I don't want to belabor the point here, and you've made your point about this being a historical thing and you being a historian, but you as a Ukrainian, how does this hit you personally?
Well, this is a good question, and it. I've been on this war for more than 30 years, by the way, because as a historian, I tried to understand the history of Ukraine, is in particular the southern part of this country, which was for millennia populated by Turks. And this country has very complicated story, and Ukraine emerged as a colonizing country without any state. Can you imagine this in other countries? That's why trying to understand the history of this country, I always realized that I'm stepping across the limits which were set by Russians. They actually obliterated the history of Ukraine, in particular the history of its south. That's why the national identity is weaker in the south, to put it bluntly. And as long as I wanted to understand connection between the south and the rest of the country, I was at war with Russians. That's very simple. And for me, this is just a hot stage of the war in which I've been soldier for a long time.
Okay, let me ask you one last thing here. This war is continuing. What we hear is that Russian troops are moving towards the east now, and perhaps trying to grab land in the east and in the south. But the rest of the country is still at risk. Give me your thoughts, and perhaps other countries outside of Russia. Give me your thoughts about where you think this war stands and where it may be going.
Oh, well, of course, there are many possibilities, and perhaps the most reasonable one in my vision would be for Ukrainian army to regain all the lost territories, which have been lost since the start of this invasion, leaving out Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea area, which would allow us to concentrate on rebuilding the country. And as long as those areas in the east and in the Crimea were not willing to join the Ukrainian state, or actually they separated, they supported Russian invasion 8 years ago, I think it would be reasonable to leave them time to think and to sense the price of their decision. They have to pay for it, and I hope that international sanctions against Russia will bring their effect on the economy of this country. And they actually wanted to join Russia on the reason that Russia seemed to them prosperous, more prosperous than Ukraine at that time. So guys, let you try what you wanted. And we survived in the past 8 years without you. Let us try to restore the country. And then it's up to you. Whether you will join, I'm pretty sure that they will join us, because Russia is not a very promising place at this point, it seems like. So we have to be patient. I'm not in a Napoleonic mood. We have to be reasonable. Policy is, has its limits, especially when it comes to war.
All right.
It's unpredictable. It's better to solve little problems first.
Okay. Well, Sasha, Professor, thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge and your wisdom. And we wish you will be safe, and we hope to stay in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JJ, for the invitation and the possibility to talk to a broader audience than my students at university. Thank you.